Good afternoon, I'm Carl Deffenbaugh here in the Wisconsin Live Desk. We want to take you to Milwaukee's City Hall right now, where a press conference is just starting with the Mayor of Milwaukee and Milwaukee Health Department officials on the findings of lead levels in a number of Milwaukee public schools. Let's take you live to City Hall.
Some initial test results show alarming levels of lead dust on places like windowsills as well as on floors in some schools. We have test results from 3 schools, and in 2 of those schools, Kegel as well as Golda Meir, serious lead hazards have been identified. We provided to all of you the official communication from our health department that was delivered then to Milwaukee Public Schools just yesterday. It shows test results we have and the direction moving forward. Now, look, just this morning I visited 3 MPS schools because I'm an MPS parent, right? So I took my kids to schools, and the findings, they did disturb me, and I'm sure it's a feeling that many parents across Milwaukee probably will feel as well. But the fact that the superintendent is standing here with us today shows that MPS takes this situation very, very seriously. MPS wants to address this situation. In the ordinary course of business, the health department does not conduct lead tests in schools. These tests were prompted by some investigations into cases involving young people who, through their medical provider, were found as well as technical assistance to the school district. MPS will solve the problem, and city government will fulfill its role in protecting public health. With that, I'm going to ask for Superintendent Galvan to take the mic. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mayor. Good afternoon. Again, as the Mayor had shared, we were aware that there were some elevated lead levels that were discovered for some students, particularly at Golda Meir. At the moment that we became aware that, we have worked diligently with the health department all along the way. Steps have been taken to remediate that situation, and we'll continue to work with the city in that. The city has, and the health department, has assured us that those spaces are good for our students to occupy, so occupancy is not the issue. We will continue to work to enhance any steps that we need to with the city upon their recommendations. All along the way, they've been helpful. I can't speak for the health department, but in communications with them, they have shared that what we are doing to remediate those situations is right in line with what they've asked us to do. So again, my message is that we will continue to work with the health department. We know lead is an issue throughout our city. If your house was built before 1978, you have lead there. So we will do everything that we can. We'll continue to make sure that our students are safe and that we address the problems. And we'll take recommendations from the City Health Department to make sure we continue to do so. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Mike Todorias, Commissioner of Health with the City of Milwaukee Health Department. Just providing an update of kind of how we got to this point and what we're doing to work with MPS to address these hazards for children. Earlier in January, we were doing a routine investigation of a lead-poisoned child here in the City of Milwaukee. For many of you that don't know, our Health Department has a statutory obligation to follow children that test high for lead poisoning here in the City of Milwaukee. So we operate under state statute and then have local ordinance that we utilize to ensure that our children are safe in the city. And it initially starts with a child's provider testing for lead in a routine visit. For 6 and under children here in the city of Milwaukee, recommend that everyone get their child tested annually. But as children get older and we have children with comorbidities or other health issues like developmental delays or other chronic conditions, it's more likely needed to have routine lead screening. So for us in this case, we were investigating a lead-poisoned child, and through that investigation, which started in mid-November, we went through our normal risk assessments with primary and secondary addresses, and that was a really comprehensive set of tests and questions and interviews with the parents that takes about 2 to 4 weeks to get going. Through that investigation, we had holidays, and then obviously waiting for results back from sampling that we were doing at the primary and secondary addresses. We identified that there were no lead hazards in the initial case. As we did further interviewing with the family and build a stronger rapport with our family, we learned that the child was potentially exposed at Golda Meir Lower Campus. In presenting to Golda Meir to do the site investigation and walkthrough, we identified hazards pretty quickly within the school. So as the superintendent mentioned, we worked really quickly with MPS to address those issues, and even over the weekend, MPS had staff working to remediate those issues at Golda Meir. As we were doing this, we also uncovered another child with a similar set of health conditions that encouraged us to go to look at another school, which was Kegel School on the south side, to investigate that school's potential lead hazards. As part of our normal investigation into any lead poisoning case, we took dust wipe samples. So that's looking at horizontal surfaces and corners of rooms, windowsills, door jambs, for lead dust in a building. And as we've mentioned, that takes a little bit of time to get those lead results back. So we recently got those lead test results back earlier this week, and promptly sent notification to the district and to the school board to alert them to the high levels of lead. So what are we doing at this point? As the superintendent mentioned, we are working closely with MPS Facility Services to make sure that those lead surfaces are made safe. We are conducting another lead risk assessment on Kegel School, so we've already conducted and completed the one on Golda Meir Lower Campus, and that really provides a template for what work needs to be done to make those spaces safe. And then at the same time, we have partners from Children's Wisconsin and 16th Street Community Health Centers who are here with us in the room to support enhanced community testing for parents that need and want to get their child tested. So we're really making the recommendation for children who attend an MPS school in an aftercare program that are 6 and under. Strongly recommend you get a lead screening test. You should be doing that regardless anyway. That's our recommendation for every City of Milwaukee child here in our great city. For parents and guardians of students who are a parent who has a student who has some developmental delays or needs, we strongly recommend that you also get a test done for your child. Scientific research in our experience has shown that children who are on the autistic spectrum tend to have pica behavior or hand-to-mouth behavior that can lead to a higher risk of lead exposure. So again, if your child is under 6, highly recommend that you get a test. If your child has special needs, also recommend getting a test for them. But for any child and adult who's over the age of 6 in MPS locations, your likelihood of having serious lead poisoning is very low. So through normal cleaning with wet mops and disposable wipes that happens in the course of just a teacher or facility staff making the room ready for teaching, that can help mitigate the risk of lead exposure within those rooms. So for that age group of 6 and up, the likelihood that you'll need a lead test is very low. If you would like to make a provider visit to do that, you're certainly encouraged to do that, but really the two primary priority groups are 6 and under because they still have that hand-to-mouth behavior, and then students that have special needs would be highly encouraged to get tested at this point. With that, I think take some questions.
Yeah, for the superintendent, it's clear how this was discovered, but can you tell us why this testing wasn't happening prior to the discovery of a student with higher lead levels?
Again, we have our normal protocols are to review our buildings. That's done annually, a couple of times a year. As was mentioned, these are conditions that aren't typical and aren't normal, right? So we do proactively make sure our buildings are clean and up to par, and then whenever anything comes up to us, then we adjust if we need to.
So it's not a policy or a part of your protocol to test for this specific lead when you do your annual checks?
Are you asking if we test children for lead? No. That's part of
But the building.
health department. Again, we assume that lead is in every building in the city of Milwaukee if it was built prior to 1978. So we follow guidelines to make sure that we take appropriate measures of encapsulating, that we work with the city on to make sure, and the health department on to make sure that we meet those regulations.
So why wasn't this caught before November?
Again, when it comes to our attention, I can't speak about specific cases. I don't want to talk about a child in that specific case.
This might be for the health department, but can you describe why occupancy in these rooms is not a concern?
Yep, so with any lead investigation that we do, when we're dealing with lead paint, particularly in a home, we will use what are called in-room controls to make sure that a family or an occupant can stay in the property. So in this case, working with MPS to encourage their enhanced cleaning, which is going to, with wet mopping or disposable wipes, take up the dust, lead dust, and obviously then it's just disposed of. So MPS is doing enhanced cleaning, as the superintendent spoke to at the beginning. At Golda Meir, there was actual renovation work that was happened to encapsulate the paint and make it safe again. So there are steps that MPS has been taking to ensure that the risk to the student body is low.
Can you say how many students in MPS have tested for the high lead levels? You mentioned the two, but...
Yeah, there's two, and that is what kind of led us to this moment, because obviously when we do any investigation for any child in the city of Milwaukee, it is comprehensive. It includes all of those sampling that I mentioned, and on average, just for kind of background, we get around 1,200 referrals for lead-poisoned children in the city of Milwaukee, and then of those 1,200, around 100 to 200 of those cases are actually where we do this really intensive investigation into primary and secondary addresses. So if you have 200 children that we're doing this investigative work into, that could be multiple properties per child. And if a child has a really elevated lead level, we will file that child up to 2 years in some cases to ensure that the lead levels come down.
Is that what led to the other schools listed on the report?
Yeah, so we were doing our due diligence and had other cases that we were investigating. And as we investigated those cases, we asked the questions to say, hey, do you the hazards in your home and the secondary addresses are not present, are you in attendance at an MPS school? And in those cases, the answer was yes.
Yeah, it seems clear why you guys studied or tested Golda Meir and Kegel, but can you explain why Maryland and the Chinese Immersion School were also tested?
Yep, so as I just mentioned, there were additional cases that were just going about our normal routine investigation, and out of an abundance of caution as we were going through this process with MPS Facility Services, took the step of just checking those schools as a precautionary measure.
The health department says that MPS needs to immediately and significantly improve detection, monitoring, and control of lead hazards. What does that look like for the school district?
As the superintendent mentioned, there is and I'm sure you can speak more to it, their facilities work have a lead paint management plan, and as the superintendent mentioned, there's an annual inspection that occurs at each of the schools. So with that, we are working with them and our partners at Department of Health Services with the state to ensure that any edits, revisions to that plan are enhanced so that we don't find ourselves in this situation again.
So I guess what needs to change, because obviously if there's an annual checkup, you missed a couple schools, Golda Meir and Kegel. So what needs to change, what needs to be better in the plan so that these annual checkups catch this?
I have not seen any revisions yet from the Department of Health Services, but part of this is just ensuring that staff are properly trained, and working again with the health department to ensure that we are both prepared to support each other in doing this work. And I don't know, Superintendent, if you had other thoughts to the plan and enhancing it at all.
Again, just as you had mentioned, as the Department of Health Services, and I believe there was something even in the news today regarding the state level of testing and requirements are changing. So we want to make sure that we're in line with that, and we'll work with our partners at the City Health Department to make sure whatever those changes are necessary, we'll put that in place.
I also want to, before you ask the superintendent the next question, I just want to add my thanks to our partners at Children's Wisconsin, as well as 16th Street health centers for their partnership here, and also to add that in our legislative package, where the city makes requests to state government each year, one of the asks from the city is for the state to increase funding to allow us to be able to provide some additional opportunities to catch some of these things, to get funding for that. So that's an enhancement that we're seeking to employ here for issues like this as well.
Superintendent, what would you like to say to parents who are seeing these headlines today? Is Golda Meir and Kegel, and I know Maryland has pending test results, are those safe for students right now?
Again, from what we know from our work with the City Health Department is that yes, they are safe for our students to be occupying. Again, not to minimize any of this, we have a number of schools, we have a city where lead paint was present in every building built before 1978. So as these things are changing in the laws or the requirements, we will obviously do whatever we need to do. Again, we will work with our experts to make sure that our places are safe, and they've told us that they are, so we'll continue to work with them.
Do you know off the top of your head how many school buildings MPS has and how many were built before 1978?
Off the top of my head, no. I know 155 schools currently, but I can certainly get that. I know it's a large number of our schools. As we know, our schools are older, right? So these are issues that we are aware of. As I said, any home, and that's why I'm glad the health department is here as well, built before 1978 has lead.
Funding has been a big topic for MPS. How do you plan to cover the changes to the cleaning and the protocols you guys have to do at these schools?
Again, we'll wait to see what the changes are and adjust that way. And some of them could be, as mentioned, as easy as, do we need to buy more wipes? I know that sounds simplistic, but if that's a step we need to take, whether, we need to think differently about painting, those are all options that we'll explore when we get more guidance from our partners.
We can do one more question.
Can you confirm, though, that since November, when all of this came to light, that only those 4 schools have been tested, irrespective of the routine annual review, but given these concerns, only since November, 4 schools?
Just 4, yep.
Will you test more? Can you come up to the podium? Sorry.
We will test more if there are lead-poisoned children. But again, we go through the step of initially investigating the primary residence and caregiver residence or any affiliated residence with that child. And after we exhaust those options, then we would pursue an MPS school in that case.
All right, thank you, everybody.
And lastly, I'll just say thank you, Commissioner. We see the issue. MPS is here, ready to address the issue. City government and the health department stands at the ready to provide the technical assistance necessary in order to make sure that schools are safe for every single student. Thank you all.
Thank you.
You've been watching a press conference with different city officials there, the mayor of Milwaukee, as well as the health commissioner, and you saw the interim superintendent for MPS schools, Eduardo Galvan, answering questions after dangerous levels of lead were found at least at 2 different Milwaukee public schools, Golda Meir as well as Kegel Elementary School. They also tested 2 other schools. There are still pending results from Maryland Montessori as well that they are monitoring. This came after 2 different students had lead exposure. That's what led to the research into those different schools and the findings announced today. As you heard from the health commissioner and the interim superintendent, there are certain things they're doing to try to mitigate those lead issues at different schools. Some of it comes with regular cleaning. Some of it comes with changes to protocols and how things are monitored. We will continue to follow this for you throughout the day on Fox Local, as well as with our reporters out there across southeastern Wisconsin. An issue the health commissioner said is in particular interest if you have a child age 6 or under, or a child that's developmentally disabled in some way. Those are the groups that are more likely to have their hands in their mouths, as any parent would know out there, and that's where some of the lead exposure levels come into play. Interesting that all this is coming on the day as well, as we heard from the interim superintendent, not the permanent superintendent. The district has their 3 finalists in Milwaukee today that are up for the permanent job of superintendent of MPS, speaking to some of the challenges, both on the health side of things for an aging infrastructure system in terms of the age of the buildings in MPS, but also the financial issues that the district has faced over the last couple years to lead to this moment as well. Again, much more on Fox Local. Thanks for checking this out. A report from the Wisconsin Live Desk here on the state of lead, and in some cases dangerous levels of lead in at least 2 Milwaukee public schools.